Okay, so as always, if you can't hear me, you missed something, you want me to repeat it, or you have a question, feel free to interrupt me so that you can get as much out of this session as you can. And also, I love it when you guys participate, so feel free to answer questions or even like contribute something to the discussion. So we'll be in the new practice test 1. Again, I'll repeat that the SAT has been redesigned. So you need to spend time like seeing what changes have been made. And if you're going to practice, I'd advise you to use the new design because it's quite different from the old one. So you might be practicing skills that you might not even need for the new SAT. So just watch out as you prepare, and the materials that you use, make sure that they are actually on the new SAT. Okay, so as I said, we'll be in the writing section. The reading and the writing sections have been combined. And so they won't tell you that this is a reading or this is a writing question. So it's up to you to be able to filter out and see which section the questions are from. And of course, if you're able to tell the kind of question that it is, you know whether it's reading or writing. I would say in general, reading questions are focused more on comprehension. So they would ask you about the passage in terms of like the main idea or the function. You are like trying to analyze or like get the point of a passage. But writing is more grammar. So they would ask you about the placement of a comma or which word should be used, things like that. So writing is not going to involve you understanding the passage. It will just involve you seeing what rules should be used and whatnot. So if we were to skim through this first practice test, you can see this one asks you for the choice that completes the text most logically. So this is a word choice question, and it's grammar. You would have to know which word makes sense in the sentence, and so does the second one. So just to give you a heads up, you would need to differentiate which one is reading and which one is writing. And that's very important because each question is going to have a different approach. It's going to have different rules that you're going to use. So the more you practice, the easier it will be for you to tell like which topic a question is from. Okay, so I'm going to share the writing cheat sheet. Compared to the reading section, there have been very few changes on the writing section. And so I would still advise you to use this. It gives you the rules that are given. Like I said, writing is a grammar test. So it's testing whether you know the rules of English, in short. And you can't do that if you don't know what the rules are. And I also said there are some rules that are specific to the SAT. So you really need to know the rules that are given to you. So this is just a summary. Some of them you would need to go deeper into the explanation that's given in the textbooks for your understanding and for your application. But this just breaks down like the rules that you would need on the SAT. There's quite a lot of rules, as you can see. This is my summary, which has like 45. And I would advise you to like make this your own. So add rules that you think you need to remember that are not here, or subtract those that you already know, or, you know, things like that, just so that you make it as interactive as you can. And there's going to be different types of questions that you will see on the writing section. And these different points apply to the different kinds of questions. But for today, I'd like us to focus on relevance. Okay, so these are not in any order. Okay, give me a second. Okay. So we'll be focusing, sorry, let me highlight this. We'll be focusing on some of the points. I'll be highlighting the ones that were on just so that everyone can be on the same page. And again, if you miss anything or you can't hear me, please let me know. I know my connection is not very stable, so. Okay, so before we go into the specific tips for relevance, I want you to first of all be able to tell when you're on a relevance question. Like I said, this time reading and writing are combined. So they're not going to tell you that this is a reading question or this is a writing question. And I'll also be utilizing the chat to like put some points so I don't have to write everything down. So we're looking at relevance. When it comes to relevance, there are different kinds of questions that you're going to meet. Some of them are going to be deletion questions. So sometimes they'll circle a sentence in the passage and ask you whether it should be kept or removed. And then, so that's really to do with relevance, but a specific type of relevance. And then sometimes they'll ask you a revision question, like, should this sentence be added into the passage that has been given? So basically they're asking you, should this sentence be there or not? Should I delete it? Should I keep it? Should I add this there? Like, would it make sense in the context? So of course, this has to do with relevance, but relevance has a lot of different definitions. So I want you to think of relevance in terms of the SAT, because it's going to be very different from like your normal understanding of relevance. So there are some questions that I want you to ask yourself whenever you meet any question that has to do with relevance. So you're basically analyzing this sentence, like, should this sentence be added? Should I remove it from the passage? So whenever you come across that, the first thing that you need to look at is the context. And if you've attended reading sessions, I use this word a lot because it's very important. But it basically means you need to use the information that's given to you as sort of a background to figure out whether something should be there or not, right? So context is a very big part of anything that you meet. Okay, so let's say you are on this question and you read the passage and they ask you, should this sentence be removed or kept? So like I said, you have to ask yourself some questions. First of all, is this information new, right? The definition of relevance means you need something to be there. So if something has already been stated in the passage, it's obviously not new information and it's not relevant in any way because it's not doing anything important or anything unique or special, right? So that's the first question you should ask yourself whenever you meet a relevance question. Is this information new or has it already been given in the passage? Like, do I really need it to be there? So that's the first question. Is this information new? Now, of course, it's possible to have information that is new but not relevant, right? If I'm having a discussion about, I don't know, this SAT session, and then all of a sudden I say, oh, water is nice. That's new information, but it's not relevant in any way, right? So that's the thing that has to do with context. Does this contribute to the discussion, right? So look at what has been given to you and then analyze, right? Is this really in line with the discussion that I've been given? Is it providing information that's new and also necessary in the discussion? And so I keep emphasizing this, but the SAT is a standardized test. So it's nothing to do with your opinion, right? There's not going to be a sentence that maybe some people would think should be there and other people think shouldn't be there. So if you have a sentence that meets these two qualities, it provides new information and it contributes to the discussion, it's relevant, that's all. Even if you don't think it sounds right, or even if you don't think it makes sense, as long as it's giving you new information and it's contributing to the discussion, it's going to be relevant, right? And you need to let go of that thought like, oh, I think it should be there, or oh, I think it would make sense, because that's not the definition of relevance, right? So think of it in these two ways. Is this new information? Is it contributing to the discussion? And again, I repeat, if it does meet these two things, it is relevant, right? It doesn't matter like how it sounds or how you feel about it, you have to stick to the definition of relevance. So those are the two things that you should ask yourself for you to figure out whether a sentence should be there or not. And it doesn't go beyond these two qualities. New information makes sense in context. And another thing about context is it goes deeper than just the topic, right? So let me put it in this way. We talked about the main idea in reading, which is something you should be very familiar with by now. But the main idea is the topic that is being talked, or the topic in discussion plus what is being said about it. So if I'm talking about water, and there's a lot that can be said about water. I can talk about its chemical composition. I can talk about the color that it is. I can talk about how important it is for life. Like there's so many aspects of water as a topic that I can talk about. And so to narrow it down, I would say, oh, what am I saying about water? So even if I'm saying, oh, water is amazing and I need it to survive, I've never lived a day without drinking water, I would get sick without it, right? So the main idea of my discussion is that, oh, water is important. So if I'm talking about that, and then someone just comes and say, oh, the chemical composition of water, it has hydrogen and oxygen. That's still on the topic, but it's not contributing to the main idea. So I want you to go beyond when you're asking yourself, does this contribute to the discussion? Go beyond the topic, ask yourself what is actually being said about it. So basically, what is the conversation going on? And does this add to the conversation? If it doesn't, then it shouldn't be there, no matter how nice it sounds or, So make sure that you are following these two things. Is this information new? And does this contribute to the discussion? So that's when it comes to deletion questions, right? Should it be there or should it not be there? Okay, so any questions so far, contributions? Okay, great. So that's for deletion. Ask yourself those two questions. When it comes to revision, it's a different story. Okay, so sometimes they'll ask you, should we add this sentence or should we not add this sentence? In that case, you still ask yourself these two questions. Is this information new? And is it contributing to the discussion? Because then it's kind of like deletion, but then it's the other way around. You're trying to see if you should add the sentence in or not. But then there are some times when you'll be given a focus. So I'll call these focus revision questions. Sometimes they'll give you something specific. Maybe they'll ask you, oh, which sentence would most contribute to the main idea? Or which sentence would introduce the next paragraph? Something like that. So whenever you're given a focused revision, there's only one answer that's going to do that. And again, that goes back to the SAT being a standardized test, right? There's not going to be two sentences that both do the same thing, and then you have to choose which one is better, because that would be a flawed exam, right? So always look, when you're given something to focus on, only look at the focus, because there's only going to be one answer that does that. So if they tell you like, oh, pick an answer that introduces the next paragraph, there's only going to be one option that talks about what is in the next paragraph, or that talks about it in the right way. So always make sure when you're given a focus, that's what you're looking at. But still ask yourself the same thing, like in terms of what I'm focusing on now, is this information important to the discussion? And then that's going to guide you to the answer. So just keep in mind that relevance has a different or a kind of different definition when it comes to the SAT. It has to be new information and it has to make sense in the discussion. So looking at the specific tips that are given here, let's see. Oh, okay, I was on the wrong. Okay. Okay, so looking at, for some reason, my laptop has jammed. Okay, give me a second. Let me reshare my screen. Okay, we'll work with it as it is. I'm not able to see the cursor, but okay. Okay, so if we look at number 31, it has to do with relevance in terms of revision. Okay, and this is the last part of 31 has an important point that's going to help you when it comes to answering those two questions. Okay, so addition questions are the same as relevance questions because you're basically asking yourself, should I include this sentence in the paragraph or should I not include it there, right? So when it comes to addition questions, you have to be sure to read the surrounding information and get the point before looking at the options. This is going to help you because you're going to have 4 different options that would make sense if you're not looking at the context, right? They're trying to mislead you. So it's important that you already know the context before you go to the actual sentences because elimination is not going to work here, or it would be a waste of time if it does. So basically you have to know what you're looking for in an answer before you look at the answers. And luckily for you guys, you have very short passages because before this we would have like a whole page of a passage and you have to read through everything to know what the main idea is. You guys only have like 4 sentences, sometimes 5 or 6, right? So you have a short passage that you have to read through. And so you have to use it to get the main point. As we said, the main point is the topic and what is being said about it. So once you figure out what the topic is, it's easy for you to come up with the main idea just by like reading through. That's going to help you find the answer. So once you know the main idea and you know you're keeping those 2 things in mind, I'm looking for information that talks about the main idea, but in a new way, you know, it talks about exactly what the discussion is, but it's still providing new information, right? And so the last part, like I said, is a very key sentence that will help you when it comes to these questions. So an added sentence must have part of the sentence before and part of the sentence after with proper transition, right? So this just tells you that if you're looking at a passage and you're trying to analyze the context, look at the sentence that appears before the position that you're looking at, right? Is this sentence kind of talking about the discussion that's before and part of the sentence after, right? And mostly if you use the sentence before, that's already enough to help you. So you know the main idea. And another thing that you can use is look at the sentence before, because you're looking at a sentence that makes sense in the paragraph. So it kind of has to connect to what has been said before, but this just ties to it contributing to the main idea. So specifically, you can analyze the sentence before and the sentence after. That will kind of guide you. If you put a sentence that doesn't make sense with the sentence after, that's not likely the answer. Yeah, but overall, if you have the main idea in mind, that will definitely help you come up with the best answer possible. So basically, use the surrounding information. Look at the sentence before, analyze the sentence after, and that will help you. I think this can be kind of a proving process, right? So if you already have the main idea before looking at the options, you know what you're looking for. Whatever answer you find, you can now prove it by looking at the sentence before, like, okay, now, is this sentence actually making sense? Is it actually in line with the discussion that's being given? But also be careful, like I said, not to use your own opinion and be like, oh, this sounds right. Oh, this sounds, it's not about how it sounds. It's about how relevant it is. Is it new information? And is it making sense in the context? Yeah. So do we have any questions? Okay, great. So we're going to go through some examples, and those will just be to reinforce the topic. The new SAT is very different. So there might be a few additional tips that we see, or even some things that we need to subtract that might only have applied the old SAT, but the same concept still applies. Okay, so I already mentioned that these first questions are talking about word choice. I noticed that there are a lot of questions to do with word choice now. So we'll look at that in the weeks to come. So that's just something to keep in mind as you go on. Most of these are reading questions, and it seems like that's how it is. It like starts with writing, goes to reading, and then goes back to writing. But the most important thing is for you to know which section you're dealing with so that you know how to approach the question. Because like I said, each question is different. Okay, here's an example, question 17. And yes, so I want you guys to be able to come up with the answer based on the tips that we've looked at. And like you have seen, this is a very short passage. It has like 4 sentences. And so you don't have a lot of information to deal with. Another tip that I'll give you is look at the question first. Because you're dealing with such a short passage. Let me write that in the chat. So you're dealing with such a short passage that you can keep an idea in mind as you read. So if you know, oh, I'm looking for the function, and that's what you have in mind as you read, you can easily find the answer the first time you read. So you're trying not to waste time by reading through the question and then reading through again. So look at the question first. That will help you. It will help you save a lot of time and find the answer. Okay. And also the Zoom we're using today will time us out at some point. So if it does, just rejoin and we'll continue. Okay. So I'm going to read through, and we're looking for the choice that most logically completes the text. So this is kind of an addition question. You're trying to find something that provides new information and contributes to the idea. Okay, so I'm going to read through it. It says, herbivorous sauropod dinosaurs could grow more than 100 feet long and weigh up to 80 tons, and some researchers have attributed the evolution of sauropods to such massive sizes. And some researchers have attributed the evolution of sauropods to such massive sizes to increase plant production, resulting from high levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide during the Mesozoic era. However, there is some evidence of significant spikes in carbon dioxide levels coinciding with relevant periods in sauropod evolution, such as when the first large sauropods appeared, when several sauropod lineages underwent further evolution towards gigantism, or when sauropods reached their maximum known sizes, suggesting that. So we're looking for a choice that most logically completes the text. We're trying to find a sentence that's sort of going to summarize the ideas that we've talked about. Okay, so if I was to look at this and try to summarize this, remember that the main idea is the topic plus the so what. The topic is obviously these sauropod dinosaurs, I just call them dinosaurs. We're looking at these dinosaurs, right? And then the topic is to do with their size, right? We're talking about them growing to that size. And these people are trying to analyze, like, why did they grow that fast? So there's plant production that's being suspected. And like, they're basically trying to figure out why why the evolution happened in that way. So that's the main idea. Okay. A says fluctuations in atmospheric carbon dioxide affected different sauropod lineages differently. B says the evolution of larger body sizes in sauropods did not depend on increased atmospheric carbon dioxide. C says atmospheric carbon dioxide was higher when the largest non-sauropods lived than it was when the first sauropods appeared. D says sauropods probably would not have evolved to such immense sizes if atmospheric carbon dioxide had been even slightly higher. Okay, so we know that the topic is sauropods and their size. So in this case, it's important to analyze the last part. Remember we said the sentence that's in, this is a very long sentence, but still the same sentence. And we're looking for something that contributes to this discussion. So what is this sentence saying in line with the main idea? It's saying there's no evidence of significant spikes in carbon dioxide levels. So they're basically trying to disprove this theory that the massive sizes was due to high levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Some researchers have revealed yes. So there were massive sizes of plant production, and so there were high, the plants increased because of the carbon dioxide. So basically, if they say carbon dioxide didn't increase, then the plants didn't increase. So that theory is disproved. And that's what the sentence is saying. So there's no evidence of those spikes, such as when these things happen and when they reach their maximum known sizes. So what does this suggest? So what is the conclusion of that sentence? And remember, it has to provide new information and make sense in context. So let's look through them individually. A says fluctuations in atmospheric carbon dioxide affected different sauropod lineages differently. First of all, they're discounting the carbon dioxide for all of them. So lineages is off topic. It doesn't make sense in context. B says the evolution of larger body sizes in sauropods did not depend on increased atmospheric carbon dioxide. Okay, B makes sense in context, still contributes to the discussion in the sentence, and it provides new information. C says atmospheric carbon dioxide was higher when the largest non-sauropods lived than it was when they first appeared. No, this is wrong in the context. D says sauropods probably would not have evolved to such immense sizes if atmospheric carbon dioxide had been even slightly higher. So I go for B. Does anyone not agree with B? What do you guys think? Okay, I guess everyone agrees with B, which is good. So remember that was just to show you the process. Remember that the first thing that you have to do is see what the main idea is, and that will help you. And you see how we can apply reading strategies or reading principles in the writing section as well. But the main point is context is important in both sections. Okay, so let's see. 19 is mostly about the convention of English, which is not what we're looking at, so we'll skip it. So this is to do with grammar. As you can see, this is obviously writing, and you can only answer this if you know the grammatical rules. So you need to spend time knowing and practicing the rules. Okay, so still here you can see the differences are punctuation. So that's what's being tested. And it's the same for these. Also grammatical transitions. This is to do with infographics. So does this. Okay. So we're going to see if we have any, or we'll go back to the same type of question, the one that asks if it's relevant. Okay, question 18. And this is for you guys. So pay attention as I read. It's basically the same question as the last, except a new passage. It's asking which choice most logically completes the text. So it says, in documents called judicial opinions, judges explain the reasoning behind their legal rulings. And in those explanations, they sometimes cite and discuss historical and contemporary philosophers. Legal scholar and philosopher Anita L. Allen argues that while judges are naturally inclined to mention philosophers whose views align with their own positions, the strongest judicial opinions consider and rebut potential objections. Discussing philosophers whose views conflict with judges' views could therefore. So that was a lot, but the topic is these judicial opinions that the judges share. So what is being said about them, we can analyze. Well, the first sentence basically says they cite philosophers. So they quote philosophers in their reasoning behind rulers. And then someone argues that they are naturally inclined. So in short, the judges end up agreeing with philosophers whose views align with their own. But then the strongest opinions will consider potential objections. So basically discussing philosophers' opinions that they don't agree with, right? So that's a different perspective. And then discussing philosophers whose views conflict with judges' views could therefore, okay, so this is the part that we're asking about. So basically judicial opinions are being shared, they cite philosophers, and then they naturally mention those whose views align, but they could also cite, like basically disprove those whose opinions they don't agree. So what could this do for them? A says, allow judges to craft judicial opinions without needing to consult philosophical works. B says, help judges to improve the arguments they put forward in their judicial opinions. C says, make judicial opinions more comprehensible to readers without legal or philosophical training. D says, bring judicial opinions in line with views that are broadly held among philosophers. Okay, so what do you guys think? A, B, C, or D? And you can feel free to type in the chat as well if you don't want to speak up. But feel free to unmute yourself as well. Anyone with an answer? Okay, the meeting will be ending in less than a minute. Yeah. Okay. So we were looking at question 18, and it's asking us which choice most logically completes the text. And we said the first thing is we have to find out what the main idea is, because that helps us to know what the context is so that we can find out which choice would most logically complete the text. And we said we're looking at two things. Is it providing new information? And is this information making sense in context? And we went through this passage. We said the topic is these judicial opinions that the judges are giving. And then we said the so what is we're looking at the philosophers that these people cite. And we said someone is arguing here that judges will most likely mention someone whose opinion they agree with, but the strongest judicial opinions consider and rebut potential objections. So basically, if they want the argument to be strong, they can cite people they don't agree with and then say why they don't agree with them. Okay, and then the last part is discussing philosophers whose views conflict with judges' views could therefore, and we're looking for something that is relevant to the paragraph that we just read. A says, allow judges to craft judicial opinions without needing to consult philosophical works. B says, help judges improve the arguments they put forward in their judicial opinions. C says, make judicial opinions more comprehensible to readers without legal or philosophical training. D says, bring judicial opinions in line with views that are broadly held among philosophers. So what do you guys think? A, B, C, or D?
I'd say C.
C, make judicial opinions more comprehensible with readers, to readers without legal or philosophical training. Okay, does everyone else agree? Okay, I guess so. So we're going to analyze each option, right? We looked at what the focus of this whole paragraph is. And we said the first thing to do is find out the main idea, which we did. We're looking at the philosophers who are being cited and the contribution that it has to the arguments. And we said for us to really find out if a sentence should be added or not, we can also look at the sentence before that. And we looked at this sentence before, which is basically talking about how if they cite someone they agree with, it's going to strengthen their argument. But if they cite someone they don't agree with, that strengthens the argument even more because they are basically rebutting any potential objections. So discussing philosophers whose views conflict with judges' views could therefore, and we have this word therefore, which is a cause and effect transition. And this basically tells you that this sentence should be a conclusion of the sentence before. And remember, for us to know if something is relevant, we're asking ourselves, first of all, is it new information? 2, is it making sense in context? And we already read what the context is. A says, allow judges to craft judicial opinions without needing to consult philosophical works. This is kind of, it's new information, but it doesn't make sense in the discussion because that's all we're focusing on, how philosophers are cited. So we're not looking for we're not looking to eliminate philosophical works. B says, help improve the arguments they put forward in their judicial opinions. I would go for B just because of the sentence before. Remember, it said the strongest judicial opinions consider and rebut potential objections. So basically, looking at those objections is what makes their argument stronger. So if they discuss philosophers whose views conflict with their views, they could help improve the arguments that they put forward in their judicial opinion. So we've seen how it's new information, yes, but it's still in line with what has been said in the sentence before. It's just a conclusion of what has been said in the sentence before. And if you look at C, it says, make judicial opinions more comprehensible to readers without legal or philosophical training. This one kind of goes off topic because I'm not talking about the philosophical training of the judges. We're just looking at how they cite philosophers. D says, bring judicial opinions in line with views that are broadly held among philosophers. Again, we're not talking about their views being changed in any way. We're just talking about how how discussing those views could strengthen their argument. So I would go for B. Do you guys agree or do you disagree with B? Okay, I take it everyone's on the same page. So remember that, yes, Jeremy wanted to say something?
Oh, I was saying that it would be. Uh, could you explain to me again how exactly it completes the text?
Okay. So I'll use the chat. So remember, here we're looking at relevance. We're basically asking ourselves like, okay, we have this paragraph and we want to add a sentence to it. Or which sentence should we add to it? We're looking for a sentence that's relevant to the paragraph. And so this is why this question falls under the topic of relevance. And when I'm thinking of relevance, it's different on the SAT, like I said before. We're not looking at it from our perspective of, oh, this sounds right, or, in my opinion, this should be added. We're looking at 2 things. So basically, for something to be relevant, it has to satisfy 2 qualities. It has to provide new information, And then second of all, it should make sense in context. And then we broke down the context and said, what is the context? So we said the context is the main idea. So basically, for you to add a sentence in, it has to first of all make sense, or first of all provide new information, second of all make sense in the discussion that's being given. So that was why the first thing we did was that we broke down this, the paragraph, and tried to figure out what the main idea is, which we did, right? And then we also said it's important to look at the sentence before and see what connection those two have. So basically, you're going to be given clues to the context that this sentence should obey. And most likely, they're going to be in the sentence before, right? So we know we're looking for something that most logically completes the text. And we know in the beginning, we're just being told, oh, judges cite philosophers. So basically, when judges are explaining why they found someone guilty or not guilty, they usually talk about philosophers from the standpoint of philosophers, and they cite different philosophers. And then the sentence before talks about how judges would most likely cite philosophers who they agree with. So they would say, oh, I chose this person as guilty because this philosopher said that if someone blinks too many times, then they are guilty. Yeah, and that's what the person did, right? So they are citing someone who they agree with. But the last part of this sentence says, the philosopher's strongest judicial opinions consider and rebut potential objections. So basically say, oh, I had this other philosopher say that you can't really tell whether someone is guilty or not. But I think that's wrong because the body speaks. So, something like that. And they cite someone who they don't agree with, but also like eliminate potential objections. And I feel like this is the biggest clue. And because of how the next sentence goes, it says, discussing philosophers whose views conflict. So this is still explaining the last part, if they consider and rebut potential objections from philosophers they conflict with, it could therefore. So we're saying, what is it going to do if they discuss the views that conflict with their decision? What could it do? And we've already been told the strongest opinions consider and rebut potential objections. So in talking about other people's views they don't agree with, they're strengthening their own standpoint. So basically, this word therefore is a cause and effect transition word. And it means if I say, oh, I am here, therefore, or maybe I am at the restaurant, therefore I want to eat, right? Therefore is a cause of me being there, because I'm surrounded by food, I now want to eat. So therefore is always used to connect information to like give a conclusion per se of what has already been said. So it's saying, oh, they talk about objections, strengthening their argument. Therefore, what does that do? What could it do? And so we went for B because it concludes what the sentence before says, that if they do that, they improve the arguments that they put forward. It basically gives them those strongest arguments. Yeah. So does that make it more clear? Okay, I take it does. So we talked about how the last part of this module is basically punctuation rules and word choice. So you need to be sure that you are paying attention to those rules and doing your best. So I want us to do just one more relevance question. Okay, here we go. So this is question 18, quite long, but it also asks us which choice most logically completes the text. And I'll read through it and we'll go through the main idea. And I want you guys to see which sentence would make sense in context and provide new information. It says, birds of many species ingest foods containing carotenoids, pigmented molecules that are converted into feather coloration. Coloration tends to be especially saturated in the male bird's feathers, and because carotenoids also confer health benefits, the deeply saturated colors generally serve to communicate what is known as an honest signal of birds' overall fitness to potential mates. However, ornithologist Alison J. Schultz and others have found that males in several species of the Tanager genus, Rhamphochelus, use microstructures in their feathers to manipulate light, creating an appearance of deeper saturation without the birds necessarily having to maintain a carotenoid-rich diet. These findings suggest that, so again, we're trying to conclude this study that has been given, and we know that the topic are these birds, or let me say the color of the birds, the feathers in the birds. And what we're saying about it is we're basically analyzing why do the colors change like that. And then, so the first thing was, oh, that happens because they eat healthy foods. We know carrots have carotenoids. So let's say they eat a lot of carrots and so they are healthy. So they are able to convey that signal to potentially.
Pardon, I'm not seeing choice D.
Sorry?
I'm not seeing choice D. Can you scroll up a bit?
Oh yeah, let me scroll up. Okay. Okay, so we're saying the coloration happens because of carotenoids, but another cause has been found, right? That they're able to manipulate light and make their feathers look that way. So what would be a conclusion? Is it A, individual male tanagers can engage in honest signaling without relying on carotenoid consumption? B, feather microstructures may be less effective than deeply saturated feathers for signaling overall fitness. C, scientists have yet to determine why tanagers have a preference for mates with colorful appearances. D, a male tanager's appearance may function as a dishonest signal of the individual's overall fitness. So what do you guys think?
Choice D.
D, okay, does everyone agree with D?
Yep.
All right, great, I agree with D too. Okay, so it fulfills both qualifications because it brings new information, right? The conclusion hasn't been given yet, so that's new information. And then it makes sense in context because it focuses on the signal, right? That's the main, like it talks about the last part that has been discussed, right? It talks about how it could be a dishonest signal of the fitness. So it connects to what has been said in the beginning, why people thought the coloration happens that way, and also brings into account the sentence before, right? How the other birds can do this without having a carotenoid-rich diet. And we can also eliminate the others. A says individual male tanagers can engage in honest signaling. This word honest is what makes it wrong. We said it's not correct because they are just relying on the feathers, right? B says feather microstructures may be less effective than deeply saturated feathers. This is off topic. It kind of only focuses on a small part of the ways that part I talked about microfeathers. Let's see. Saturated in birds' feathers, health benefits. So anyway, it just focuses on it. Here we are. Can use microstructures in their feathers. So that has been said, but it's not the main idea. C says scientists have yet to determine why tanagers have a preference for mates with colorful appearances. This one kind of goes off as well because we're not focusing on why that the mates follow with colorful appearances or analyzing how that mechanism works. And so C is off topic. So this is why it's very important to find your context because you have answers that also talk about what has been said, but not all of them are going to talk about the main idea. So yeah. So are there any questions on this one?
Nah, none at all.
All right, great. Okay, so like I said, we'll end early today just because the person who was supposed to teach today was unavailable. So I was just stepping in, but still we'll go over the main ideas we talked about. So we're looking at relevance as I've already put that in the chat, but yeah, we're looking at relevance and we're basically asking ourselves which sentence should be added to the paragraph, which one is relevant to the discussion. And we said relevance, you have to think of it in a very specific way as the SAT thinks about it, right? And we said, ask yourself two questions. Is this new information? And is it making sense in context? And as we have seen, the biggest thing is the second point. Is it making sense in context? And that has a big part to do with the main idea. So like we saw here, we had microstructures, which were talked about, but are not the main idea. So remember to ask yourself, what is the topic? So what word has been used the most? What am I talking about? And then what am I saying about it? So it's always the topic plus the so what. And once you get that, it will guide you as you go through the options. And then you remember that another thing that you can do is look at the sentence before, right? If something is making sense in context, it should talk about what has been said in the sentence before. And that's going to help you. And then there are times when you're given a focus. In this case, it's the last sentence. That's kind of asking you to conclude what has been said in the passage. So that can help you just like to sort of know what to zero in on as you look at the options. But again, remember to not use the options. Like don't try to plug in the sentences because some of them will sound that they make sense, but they are not relevant. So be sure to rely on the definition of relevance as you go through. And as always, make sure you practice as much as you can because that helps you to see how you are looking at the question. It helps you to analyze. If you got it wrong, you can think about, oh, why did I get it wrong? Was I thinking of it the wrong way? Or things like that. It's not just about knowing the concepts. You have to know how to apply them. And this doesn't only apply to the to the writing section. It applies to all the sections. Don't think that you are okay because you know a formula or because you know a rule. You have to also be confident in applying that rule because questions are going to be different in any section that you're going to meet. You won't find like the same question that you practiced or something like that. So be sure to practice as much as you can because your goal is to get used to using the information that you have. And you have to make sure that you develop the skills that you need to be able to use in the SAT. Yeah, so are there any questions before we end the session?
No, it's fine. I enjoyed the session. Sorry for being late.
Oh yeah, thanks for joining. Yeah. Okay, so let me stop recording.